It was nearly midnight when Michael Harrison, CEO of a company on the verge of bankruptcy, heard a strange noise coming from his office. Heart pounding, he opened the door and found a 7-year-old girl drawing on the floor, her dirty clothes revealing a life of hardship. What she had drawn on those crumpled papers wasn't just a childish scribble. It was the solution to a $300 million problem that had plagued his company for years. But no one could have imagined what would come next. Before we dive into the story, drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Enjoy the story. The fluorescent lights of Technova's 47th floor cast harsh shadows across Michael Harrison's weathered face as he stared at the stack of termination letters on his mahogany desk. At 52, the CEO had built his technology empire from nothing, but tonight felt like watching it crumble between his fingers. The clock on the wall read 11:47 p.m., and the Seattle skyline beyond his corner office windows seemed to mock him with its glittering promise of success that now felt impossibly distant. 300 employees, he whispered to the empty room, his voice cracking with exhaustion. 300 families depending on me, and I'm about to let them all down. The quantum processing project. 5 years of research, $20 million invested, and they were still months away from a breakthrough. Without it, Technova would be bankrupt by Christmas. The board meeting tomorrow would seal their fate. Michael loosened his silk tie and walked to the window, pressing his palm against the cold glass. That's when he heard it. A soft humming, like a child's lullaby, drifting from somewhere down the hall. Michael's heart skipped. The building should have been completely empty except for security. He grabbed his phone's flashlight and stepped into the darkened corridor, following the gentle melody that seemed to pull him forward like a siren's call. The humming grew stronger as he approached the old conference room they'd converted to storage. The door stood slightly ajar, and through the crack he could see a faint glow. Michael's hand trembled as he pushed the door open. On the floor, surrounded by scattered crayons and papers, sat a little girl with golden blonde hair cascading over her shoulders. She couldn't have been more than 7 years old, wearing a faded pink dress and dirty white sneakers. She was completely absorbed in her drawing, moving the crayon across the paper with the focused intensity of a master artist. "Hello there," Michael said softly, crouching down to her level. "What's your name, sweetheart?" The girl looked up with the most extraordinary eyes he'd ever seen, a deep green that seemed to hold galaxies of wisdom far beyond her years. She smiled shyly and held up her drawing. "I'm Emma," she said in a voice as clear as wind chimes. "I made this for you." Michael's breath caught in his throat as he examined the paper. It wasn't the typical stick figures and houses that children usually drew. Instead, it was an incredibly detailed diagram showing interconnected circuits, mathematical equations, and what appeared to be quantum processing algorithms. But this wasn't just any quantum processing design. This was a solution to the exact problem that had been plaguing Technova's entire research team for months. The computational pathways were laid out with a simplicity and elegance that their PhD engineers had missed completely. "Emma," Michael's voice was barely a whisper, "where did you learn to draw something like this?" The little girl tilted her head, her green eyes twinkling with innocent confusion. "I just see the pretty patterns in my head. They talk to me sometimes, you know. The numbers and the light lines, they show me how they want to dance together." Michael stared at the drawing, his mind racing. This 7-year-old child had somehow visualized the breakthrough that could save his company, save those 300 jobs, save everything he'd worked for his entire life. "Emma, this is incredible. How did you get in here? Where are your parents?" But when he looked up from the drawing, the storage room was empty. The crayons lay scattered on the floor, and there, in the center of the circle where Emma had been sitting, was the drawing that would change everything. Michael Harrison, CEO and master of his own destiny, sat alone on the cold concrete floor, holding a child's crayon drawing that contained the key to a $300 million solution. Michael Harrison didn't sleep that night. He sat in his leather executive chair until dawn, studying Emma's drawing with the intensity of an archaeologist examining ancient hieroglyphs. Every line, every symbol seemed to pulse with possibility. The crayon marks, made by a child's hand, contained mathematical relationships that his team of PhD engineers had missed completely. His coffee had gone cold hours ago, but Michael barely noticed. He traced the pathways Emma had drawn with his finger, seeing connections that defied everything he thought he knew about quantum processing. The innocence of the medium, children's crayons on white paper, contrasted sharply with the revolutionary complexity of the solution. By 6 a.m., exhaustion and excitement had merged into a strange euphoria. Michael reached for his phone and called Dr. Sarah Chen, Technova's head of quantum research, knowing she would be furious at the early hour, but unable to wait another minute. "Sarah, I need you in the lab now," Michael said, his voice trembling with a mixture of exhaustion and barely contained excitement. "And bring the entire quantum team. Cancel everything else they have scheduled." "Michael, it's 6 in the morning on a Wednesday. What's going on?" "I can't explain over the phone. Just trust me on this one, Sarah. This could change everything." Dr. Sarah Chen arrived 40 minutes later, still adjusting her hastily thrown-on lab coat, followed by 5 confused-looking researchers clutching coffee cups like lifelines. Michael had spread Emma's drawing across the main conference table, positioning it under the bright overhead lights. When Dr. Chen saw the drawing, her face went pale. She leaned closer, adjusting her wire-rimmed glasses, and Michael watched her expression transform from irritation to confusion to absolute amazement. "Michael, where did you get this?" she whispered, her voice filled with awe. This solves the coherent stability problem we've been wrestling with for 18 months. These quantum pathway configurations, the way the processing nodes are interconnected. It's brilliant." "Dr. Rodriguez, one of the senior researchers, peered over her shoulder. "That's impossible. We've run thousands of simulations. There's no way to maintain quantum coherence at these processing speeds without—" He stopped mid-sentence, staring at Emma's crayon solution. "Oh my God, the harmonic resonance dampeners. Why didn't we think of that?" "Can you build it?" Michael asked, his heart pounding. Dr. Chen straightened up, her eyes shining with the kind of excitement that only came from witnessing a true breakthrough. "Build it? Michael, this is revolutionary. If this works, we're not just talking about saving Technova. We're talking about changing the entire computing industry forever. This could make every existing quantum processor obsolete overnight." The next 72 hours blurred together in a frenzy of equations, prototypes, and sleepless nights. Michael practically lived in the lab, watching his team work with a desperate hope he hadn't felt in years. Emma's childish crayon marks translated into precise engineering specifications that seemed to defy the laws of physics as they understood them. On Thursday morning, after 3 days of round-the-clock work, the prototype powered up successfully. "It's working," Dr. Chen whispered, staring at the readings on her screen with disbelief. "Dear God, Michael, it's actually working. The processing speed is 3 times faster than anything currently available, and the power consumption is 60% lower. The implications for AI development, cryptography, medical research—" Michael's hand shook as he picked up his phone to call Marcus Webb, CEO of Horizon Industries, the client who could make or break Technova's future. His finger hovered over the contact for a moment, knowing that this call would determine whether his company lived or died. "Marcus, I know our deadline was next month, but I need you to come in today. We've had a breakthrough that I think will interest you." "Michael, I'm in the middle of—" "Marcus," Michael interrupted, "I'm telling you, that what we've developed will revolutionize quantum computing. Give me 2 hours of your time, and I guarantee you'll want to clear your entire schedule." The champagne celebration in Technova's mahogany-paneled boardroom felt hollow to Michael, despite the smiles and congratulations surrounding him. Marcus Webb had not only agreed to the original contract, but had increased his offer to $300 million, with an additional $200 million for exclusive development rights. The board members who had been preparing for bankruptcy just days earlier were now toasting their miraculous turnaround. "To Michael Harrison," declared board chairman Robert Sterling, raising his crystal flute, "who once again proves that visionary leadership can turn impossible odds into triumph." The room erupted in applause, but Michael barely heard it. While his executives celebrated their salvation, his mind was consumed with finding Emma. He had to know how she had accessed the building, and more importantly, he had to thank her properly. The child had saved 300 jobs, preserved his life's work, and transformed Technova from a failing company into an industry leader overnight. "Congratulations, Mr. Harrison," said Janet Walsh, head of security, approaching him after the celebration wound down. She was a no-nonsense woman in her 50s who had been with Technova for over a decade. "I heard about the breakthrough. Quite remarkable how these things happen sometimes." "Janet, I need your help with something confidential," Michael said, pulling her aside to a quiet corner of the boardroom. "Last Tuesday night, around midnight, there was a child in the building. A little girl, maybe 7 years old, blonde hair, wearing a pink dress. She was in conference room C on the 47th floor." Janet's brow furrowed deeply, creating lines of confusion and concern. "A child? Mr. Harrison, that's impossible. Our security protocols are airtight. Every entry and exit is logged, every floor monitored by cameras. Every elevator requires keycard access after hours. No unauthorized personnel have accessed this building in months." "I spoke with her, Janet. She handed me a drawing. This isn't a hallucination or a dream. I have physical evidence." Janet's expression shifted from confusion to professional concern. "Sir, perhaps the stress of the past few weeks, the late hours, the pressure from the board. Sometimes our minds can play tricks on us when we're pushed to our limits." "Check the footage," Michael insisted, his voice carrying the authority that had built Technova from the ground up. "Tuesday night, between 11:30 p.m. and 1 a.m., conference room C." Dying an hour later, Michael sat in the security office's cramped space, surrounded by monitors displaying feeds from dozens of cameras throughout the building. Janet fast-forwarded through the evening footage, showing him empty corridors, vacant elevators, and deserted office spaces bathed in the eerie glow of emergency lighting. "There!" Michael pointed at the screen, showing conference room C, his heart racing. 11:47 p.m. She was right there, sitting on the floor, drawing. But the footage showed nothing, an empty room exactly as it should have been. The timestamp matched perfectly with Michael's memory, but where Emma should have been sitting, there was only bare carpet and darkness. "Mr. Harrison, there's no child in this footage," Janet said gently, her voice filled with concern for her CEO's mental state. "The camera shows an empty room all night. Are you absolutely certain you weren't dreaming? The human mind under extreme stress can create very vivid experiences that feel completely real." Michael's jaw tightened with frustration and determination. "Janet, I spoke with her. She handed me a drawing that just saved this company from bankruptcy. I have physical evidence." But as he stared at the empty screen, doubt began to creep in. Had he been so exhausted, so desperate, that his mind had conjured up a miraculous solution in the form of a mysterious child? Then he saw it, a detail that made his pulse quicken. In the hallway outside conference room C, barely visible in the corner of the frame, was a maintenance cart. The timestamp showed 8:30 p.m. during the evening cleaning shift. "Who was working maintenance that night?" Michael asked, leaning forward. Janet consulted her computer logs, scrolling through employee schedules. Maria Santos and James Miller, they finished their rounds by 10 p.m., according to the checkout logs. Michael's mind raced. If Emma had somehow hidden during the cleaning shift, staying after the building was locked down. It was possible, barely, but possible. "I need their employee files and contact information," Michael said. "Mr. Harrison, I can't just give out employee personal information without proper justification." "Janet," Michael's voice carried the full weight of his authority. "A 7-year-old girl just saved this company from bankruptcy. I will find her, and I will thank her properly. Get me those files." Maria Santos lived in Sunset Gardens, a modest apartment complex in South Seattle that had seen better decades. The building's brick facade was weathered, and the parking lot was cracked with weeds growing through the asphalt. As Michael pulled his Tesla into a visitor's spot, the contrast between this neighborhood and his own penthouse lifestyle felt like crossing into a different world entirely. He had spent the drive rehearsing what he would say, but standing outside Maria's door, wearing his expensive suit and Italian leather shoes, he felt more nervous than he had during any board meeting or investor presentation. He knocked softly, hearing the sounds of a television and children playing somewhere inside. "Mr. Harrison?" Maria's eyes widened in shock when she opened the door. She was a small woman in her 50s, with graying hair pulled back in a practical ponytail and hands weathered from years of cleaning work. Her surprise quickly turned to fear. "What are you doing here? Did I do something wrong? Am I in trouble?" "Maria, please don't worry. You're not in trouble. I need to ask you about Tuesday night. Did you see a little girl in the building? Blonde hair, about 7 years old, wearing a pink dress?" Maria's face went pale, and she glanced nervously down the hallway as if checking to see if neighbors were watching. Her hands began to tremble slightly. I don't know what you're talking about, Mr. Harrison." But her reaction told Michael everything he needed to know. The fear, the nervousness, the way she avoided eye contact. She knew exactly who he was talking about. "Maria, please," Michael said gently, softening his voice. "The child helped me tremendously. She may have saved the entire company. I just want to thank her and make sure she's safe. I promise you no one is in trouble here." Tears began forming in Maria's eyes, and she looked down at her worn hands. "She's my granddaughter, Mr. Harrison. Emma. She sometimes hides in my cleaning cart when I can't find a babysitter for the evening shift. I know it's against company policy, but her mother works double shifts at Seattle General Hospital, and I can't afford proper child care on what the company pays me." Michael felt his heart skip a beat. "Your granddaughter? Maria, that little girl is remarkable. What she did for me, for the company." "Please don't fire me," Maria interrupted, her voice breaking with desperation. "I need this job, Mr. Harrison. Emma's medical bills, her special treatments, they're so expensive, and if I lose this position, I don't know what we'll do. She's all I have left of my son, and I'm trying so hard to take care of her." "Medical bills?" Michael asked, his voice gentle but urgent. "What kind of medical treatments?" Maria wiped her eyes with a tissue from her pocket, struggling to maintain her composure. "Emma has something called savant syndrome, connected to a rare neurological condition called Williams syndrome. She sees patterns and numbers differently than other children. The doctors say her brain processes visual and mathematical information in extraordinary ways, but without proper therapy and educational support, she struggles with social interactions and daily living skills." Michael's throat tightened as the pieces began falling into place. "The treatments to help her develop normally, they're expensive." "More expensive than I make in a year," Maria admitted. "The specialized therapy sessions, the educational consultants who understand her condition, the medical monitoring, it's overwhelming." But when I see her drawing those incredible pictures, understanding things that adults can't figure out, I know she has a gift that could change the world if she just gets the right help." Michael felt a deep ache in his chest. "Maria, you're not being fired. In fact, I need to meet Emma properly, and I want to help with her medical expenses." "Where is she now?" Maria looked away uncomfortably, wringing her hands. "She's with her father for the weekend, but Mr. Harrison, I don't think meeting him is a good idea." "Why not?" Maria's expression grew pained, as if the words themselves hurt to speak. "Because her father is David Chen. He used to work for Technova in the research department until 3 years ago when—" Michael's blood ran cold, and he felt the ground shift beneath his feet. David Chen. He remembered the name clearly now, remembered the termination meeting, the man who had been asking for extended leave, making what Michael had perceived as excuses about family obligations, missing critical deadlines on the very same quantum processing project that Emma had just solved. "Until I fired him," Michael finished, the full weight of realization settling on his shoulders like a crushing burden. Maria nodded sadly, tears flowing freely now. He was trying to get time off for Emma's treatments, for appointments with specialists, for therapy sessions. When you let him go, he couldn't afford her medical care anymore. He's been working 3 part-time jobs just to keep up with her basic needs, and even then, it's not enough. Michael Harrison, master of business and corporate efficiency, stood in a maintenance worker's doorway, realizing that his greatest triumph had come from the child of a man whose life he had systematically destroyed. Michael Harrison sat in his Tesla outside David Chen's apartment building for 45 minutes, staring at the cracked sidewalk and peeling paint on the building's exterior. The contrast between this neighborhood and his own penthouse lifestyle felt like a physical slap across his conscience. Every detail seemed to mock him: the broken streetlight, the playground with rusted swings, the elderly woman struggling with grocery bags that no one stopped to help. This was where David Chen lived now. This was what Michael's business decision had reduced a brilliant researcher to. David Chen answered the door, looking far older than his 38 years should have allowed. His black hair was streaked with premature grey. Deep circles under his eyes spoke of chronic exhaustion and worry. And his clothes, a faded t-shirt and jeans with patches, told the story of a man who had fallen far from the professional world he once inhabited. When David saw Michael standing in his doorway, his face hardened with 3 years of accumulated bitterness and resentment. "What do you want, Harrison?" David's voice carried the weight of every sleepless night, every medical bill he couldn't pay, every opportunity his daughter had lost because of Michael's decision. "I want to talk about Emma," Michael said quietly, trying to keep his voice steady and non-threatening. David's protective instincts flared immediately, his body tensing as if preparing for a fight. "Stay away from my daughter. Haven't you done enough damage to my family?" "David, please, just 5 minutes. Emma helped me this week in ways you can't imagine, and I think you deserve to know what happened. I think you deserve to understand what your daughter is capable of." After a long pause filled with internal struggle, David reluctantly opened the door wider. 5 minutes, then you leave and never come back." The apartment was small but immaculately clean. Every surface scrubbed and organized, with the care of someone who took pride in what little they had. But what struck Michael most were Emma's drawings, hundreds of them, taped to every available wall surface. The same intricate patterns and impossible mathematical relationships that had saved his company covered every room like a gallery of genius. "She draws constantly," David said, noticing Michael's amazement. "Ever since she was 3 years old. The doctors say it's how her brain processes the world around her. She sees connections and patterns that the rest of us miss completely. Mathematics isn't abstract to her. It's visual, emotional, alive." Michael walked slowly through the small living room, studying the drawings with new understanding. These are incredible, David. The complexity, the mathematical relationships. The night I came to you asking for time off, David began, his voice tight with controlled emotion. Emma had just been diagnosed with her condition. We were starting an intensive treatment program that required weekly appointments, sometimes twice a week. Speech therapy, occupational therapy, educational assessments. I couldn't maintain your 60-hour work schedule and get her the help she desperately needed. I thought you were making excuses, Michael admitted, shame coloring his words. David's laugh was bitter and hollow. Excuses? Michael, do you have any idea what it's like to watch your 7-year-old daughter struggle to communicate with the world because her brain works differently? To know that there are treatments and educational programs that could help her develop her extraordinary gifts, but you can't afford them because your boss values profit margins over human beings. Michael felt each word hit him like a physical blow. I didn't know the full situation. You didn't want to know, David interrupted, his voice rising with years of suppressed anger. I tried to explain, tried to show you Emma's medical reports, tried to make you understand that this wasn't about wanting time off to go fishing or play golf. This was about my daughter's future. But you saw declining productivity numbers and made a business decision. You never asked about the reasons behind it. You never considered that your employee might be fighting the biggest battle of his life. Emma appeared in the doorway like a small ghost, wearing the same faded pink dress from that night in the office. When she saw Michael, her extraordinary green eyes lit up with innocent recognition and joy. You're the sad man from the big room, she said simply, her voice clear as wind chimes. Did my picture help make you not sad anymore? Michael knelt down to her level, his eyes filling with tears he couldn't control. Yes, Emma. Your picture helped more than you could possibly understand. You saved a lot of people's jobs. You're a very special little girl. Emma smiled with the pure happiness of a child whose simple gesture had brought joy to someone else. She handed him another drawing, this one showing stick figures holding hands under a vibrant rainbow made with every crayon in her box. This one's for you too, she said. Daddy says rainbows come after storms, and you looked like you were in a really big storm that night. David watched the interaction with a complex mixture of protectiveness, confusion, and something that might have been hope. Michael, what exactly happened that night? How did Emma help you? As Michael explained how Emma's drawing had provided the breakthrough solution that saved Technova, how her innocent visualization had solved problems that teams of PhD engineers couldn't crack, David's anger slowly transformed into something more complex. Amazement at his daughter's abilities, pride in what she had accomplished, and a deep, aching sadness about what could have been if things had gone differently 3 years ago. She drew the solution to the quantum coherence problem, David whispered, staring at his daughter with new understanding. The same project that cost me my job because I couldn't give it the undivided attention you demanded. My 7-year-old daughter solved it with crayons. Michael Harrison, looking at the father and daughter whose lives he had torn apart, realized that his company's salvation had come with a moral debt he was only beginning to comprehend. Michael Harrison didn't sleep for the 4th night in a row. He stood on his penthouse balcony overlooking Elliott Bay, watching the ferry lights move across the dark water like slow-moving stars. David Chen's words echoed in his mind like an accusation that wouldn't fade, each repetition driving the knife of guilt deeper into his conscience. Emma's innocent face haunted him. The child who had saved his empire was the same child whose future he had unknowingly destroyed with his corporate ruthlessness. The city stretched out below him, millions of lights representing millions of lives, and Michael wondered how many other David Chens he had created over the years. How many families had he damaged with his single-minded focus on productivity and profit margins? How many extraordinary children like Emma were struggling without proper support because he had fired their parents for being inefficient? By dawn, Michael had made his decision. He would not simply write a check and consider his conscience clear. He would rebuild what he had torn down, and he would ensure that Emma Chen had every opportunity to reach her incredible potential. He arrived at Technova early Saturday morning and called Dr. Sarah Chen into his office. The irony of the shared surname wasn't lost on him. Two brilliant minds named Chen, one flourishing under his leadership, the other destroyed by his short-sightedness. "Sarah, I need you to be completely honest with me about David Chen," Michael said, pulling up David's old personnel file on his computer. "I want the truth, not the sanitized version for legal protection." Dr. Chen shifted uncomfortably in her chair, adjusting her wire-rimmed glasses. "Michael, that was 3 years ago. Why are you bringing this up now?" "Because I need to understand what I did," Michael said simply. "Sarah, the truth." She sighed deeply, recognizing the tone that meant Michael wouldn't accept anything less than complete honesty. "David was brilliant, Michael. One of the most intuitive researchers I've ever worked with. His theoretical work on quantum mechanics wasn't just good, it was revolutionary. He had an almost artistic understanding of how quantum systems behave, as if he could visualize the mathematics in ways that the rest of us couldn't. But toward the end, he was struggling with his work responsibilities. He was distracted, yes, missing meetings, leaving early, asking for extensions on deadlines. But Michael, we all knew he had a daughter with special needs. David was incredibly private about family matters. He never complained, never asked for special treatment, never made his problems into office drama. He just quietly tried to balance everything. Michael felt the knife of guilt twist deeper. What happened to the quantum processing research after I let him go? Dr. Chen's expression grew troubled. We struggled for months to understand his theoretical framework. David had an intuitive grasp of quantum mechanics that was almost supernatural. His work wasn't just calculations and formulas. It was elegant, artistic, inspired. After he left, we had to bring in 3 additional researchers to try to fill the gap he left behind. And even then, we couldn't crack the coherent stability problem. Until his 7-year-old daughter drew me the solution in crayons, Michael finished quietly. Dr. Chen stared at him in complete shock, her coffee cup halfway to her lips. "What did you just say?" Michael spent the next hour explaining Emma's extraordinary abilities, her mysterious appearance in the building, and the drawing that had revolutionized their quantum processing technology. Dr. Chen listened with growing amazement, occasionally asking for clarification, her scientific mind trying to process the impossible convergence of events. "Michael, do you understand what you're telling me?" she finally said. "Emma has inherited her father's quantum intuition, but it's been enhanced and focused by her neurological condition. She can visualize mathematical relationships that trained physicists with decades of education struggle to comprehend. She's not just gifted, she's operating on a completely different level of understanding. And I destroyed her chance at proper treatment and development by firing her father for trying to get her the help she needed," Michael said, the full weight of his actions crushing down on him like a physical force. Dr. Chen leaned forward intently, her scientific excitement overriding her shock. "Michael, children with Emma's condition, if they receive the right support, the right educational environment, the right therapeutic interventions, they can achieve extraordinary things. They can contribute to scientific advancement in ways we're only beginning to understand. But without proper intervention, without support and understanding, They struggle to function in a normal world, and their gifts remain trapped inside minds that can't communicate effectively with the rest of us, Michael finished. Sarah, I need you to research the best treatment programs for children like Emma. I want to know about the most advanced therapeutic interventions, the most innovative educational approaches, the most successful support systems. Money is absolutely no object. What are you planning, Michael? Michael walked to his floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out at the city where David Chen was probably getting ready for another day of juggling multiple part-time jobs, where Emma was growing up without the support she needed to reach her incredible potential. I'm planning to fix the biggest mistake I've ever made, Michael said, his voice filled with determination and purpose. And I'm planning to make sure that Emma Chen has every opportunity to become the genius she was born to be. I'm going to prove that it's never too late to do the right thing. Doctor. Chen smiled for the first time since entering the office. Michael, David always used to say that quantum particles exist in multiple states simultaneously until they're observed, and then they collapse into a single reality. Maybe it's time to observe a different possibility for Emma's future. As Dr. Chen left to begin her research, Michael Harrison stood alone in his office, knowing that the hardest part of his journey was just beginning. He had saved his company and secured his professional legacy, but now he had to save the family he had nearly destroyed in the process. The question that terrified him most was deceptively simple. Would David Chen ever be able to forgive him enough to let him help? Michael Harrison spent the weekend researching everything he could about Williams syndrome, savant abilities, and treatment programs for exceptional children. By Monday morning, his desk was covered with medical journals, specialist contact information, and treatment center brochures from around the world. Dr. Sarah Chen had compiled a comprehensive report that painted both a hopeful and heartbreaking picture of Emma's condition. The Stanford Center for Developmental Excellence has the most advanced program for children like Emma, Dr. Chen explained during their early morning meeting. They combine traditional therapy with cutting-edge neuroscience research. The director, Dr. Patricia Williamson, has worked with savant children for 20 years. What would something like that cost? Michael asked. For comprehensive care, speech therapy, occupational therapy, educational specialists, medical monitoring, family counseling, we're looking at approximately $200,000 per year, possibly more depending on Emma's specific needs. Michael didn't hesitate. Set up a meeting with Dr. Williamson. I want to understand exactly what Emma needs. But first, he had to face David Chen again. This time, Michael came prepared with more than just apologies. The construction site where David worked part-time was loud, dirty, and dangerous. Michael found him during lunch break, sitting alone on a stack of lumber, eating a sandwich from a brown paper bag. David's hands were calloused and cut, his clothes covered in sawdust, a far cry from the clean research environment where he'd once worked. "What are you doing here, Michael?" David asked wearily, not looking up from his sandwich. "I want to offer you your job back," Michael said directly. "Senior researcher position, full benefits, and a 40% salary increase from what you were making before." David looked up sharply, suspicion and anger flashing in his eyes. "Is this some kind of guilt trip? You think you can just wave money around and make everything okay?" "No," Michael said honestly. "I think I destroyed something precious, and I want to try to rebuild it. Your daughter has a gift that could change the world, David, but she needs support, treatment, educational opportunities that you can't afford on construction wages. So this is about Emma, not about me." Michael sat down on an adjacent pile of lumber, ignoring the stares from other workers. "It's about both of you. Emma needs her father to be in a position where he can advocate for her, support her development, and work alongside the specialists who understand her condition. And honestly, David, Technova needs you too. The quantum processing breakthrough Emma provided, we need someone who understands the theoretical framework to help develop it further. David was quiet for a long moment, staring at his worn hands. You really think you can just fix this with a job offer? I think it's a start, Michael said. I've been researching treatment programs for children with Emma's condition. There's a center at Stanford that specializes in nurturing savant abilities while helping children develop social and communication skills. It's expensive, but I can't afford Stanford, David interrupted bitterly. Technova can, Michael said quietly. As part of your compensation package, full medical coverage for Emma's specialized care. The best treatments, the best specialists, whatever she needs. David stared at him for a long moment, and Michael could see the internal battle playing out, hope warring with years of accumulated resentment and distrust. Why? David finally asked. Why now? Why do you suddenly care about my daughter? Michael took a deep breath, knowing this moment would determine everything that followed. Because 3 years ago, I made a decision that I thought was about business efficiency. I thought you were making excuses, being unprofessional, letting personal issues interfere with work. I never asked why. I never tried to understand what you were facing. I just saw declining productivity and acted accordingly. And now? Now I know that your 7-year-old daughter solved a problem that stumped our entire research team. I know that the same condition I indirectly prevented you from treating properly is the source of her extraordinary abilities. I know that I didn't just fire an employee, I damaged a family and potentially held back scientific advancement. David crumpled up his sandwich wrapper, his jaw working as he processed Michael's words. Even if I believed you were sincere, even if I thought this wasn't just guilt or pity, Emma barely knows me anymore. I work 70 hours a week just to keep us afloat. By the time I get home, she's usually asleep. Maria does more parenting than I do. That's exactly why this matters, Michael said urgently. Emma needs her father present in her life, not exhausted and struggling. She needs stability, consistency, and access to people who understand her gifts. David stood up slowly, brushing sawdust from his jeans. I'll think about it, he said finally. But Michael, if this is some elaborate guilt relief project, if you're planning to use my daughter as a publicity stunt for Technova's corporate responsibility image, I'll make sure you regret it. As David walked away, Michael realized that earning forgiveness would be far harder than writing checks. Trust, once broken, required more than money to repair. 3 days later, David Chen sat in Technova's Human Resources office, staring at a contract that seemed too good to be true. The salary figure alone was more than he'd made from all 3 of his part-time jobs combined, and the medical benefits package was comprehensive enough to cover Emma's most optimistic treatment scenarios. The position would be Senior Quantum Research Specialist, explained Jennifer Martinez, the HR director. You'd be working directly with Dr. Sarah Chen's team on the quantum processing development project. Your previous research would be the foundation for the new initiatives. And my daughter's medical coverage? Fully covered through our executive health plan, including experimental treatments, specialists and therapeutic programs. Mr. Harrison has specifically authorized coverage for the Stanford Center for Developmental Excellence. David signed the contract with a mixture of hope and apprehension. He was giving Michael Harrison a second chance, but more importantly, he was giving Emma the opportunity she deserved. The following Monday, David walked into the Technova research lab for the first time in 3 years. The space had been renovated and expanded, but the familiar hum of computers and the smell of electronics brought back memories of the work he'd loved before everything fell apart. David, Dr. Sarah Chen greeted him warmly. Welcome back. I have to say, Seeing Emma's solution to the coherence problem has given me a whole new appreciation for your theoretical work. The mathematical intuition clearly runs in the family. How is the quantum project developing? David asked, falling back into the rhythm of technical discussion that had been missing from his life for so long. We've built 3 prototypes based on Emma's design, and the results are extraordinary. But we're running into scaling issues, trying to maintain the quantum coherence across larger processing arrays. Your original theoretical framework might hold the key to solving that. As David immersed himself in the research, he felt a part of himself awakening that had been dormant for 3 years. The intellectual satisfaction of solving complex problems, the excitement of pushing the boundaries of what was possible. It reminded him why he'd chosen science as his career. Meanwhile, Emma had her first appointment at the Stanford Center. Michael had insisted on driving her and David personally, wanting to understand exactly what Emma's treatment would involve. Dr. Patricia Williamson was a woman in her 60s with kind eyes and a manner that immediately put Emma at ease. Her office was filled with colorful drawings, mathematical models, and puzzles designed to engage exceptional minds. "Emma," Dr. Williamson said gently, "your drawings are remarkable. I'd like to understand how you see the patterns you create. Can you tell me about the pictures in your mind?" Emma looked at her father uncertainly, then at Michael, before turning back to Dr. Williamson. "The numbers dance," she said simply. "They show me how they want to connect, like a big puzzle made of light." Dr. Williamson nodded encouragingly. "And when you draw the dancing numbers, how does that make you feel?" "Happy," Emma said, smiling. "Like I'm helping them find their friends." For the next hour, Dr. Williamson conducted a series of assessments that seemed more like games than medical tests. Emma solved visual puzzles with startling speed, recognized mathematical patterns in abstract designs, and demonstrated an intuitive understanding of spatial relationships that was far beyond her chronological age. "Emma has extraordinary visual spatial processing abilities," Dr. Williamson explained to David and Michael afterward. "Her brain can perceive mathematical relationships and patterns in ways that most people, including trained mathematicians, cannot. But like many children with Williams syndrome, she struggles with abstract language concepts and social interactions." "What does that mean for her future?" David asked. With proper support, Emma could contribute to fields like mathematics, physics, computer science, or engineering in ways we're only beginning to understand, but she'll need specialized education that nurtures her gifts while helping her develop communication and social skills. Michael leaned forward intently. "What kind of specialized education?" "We'd recommend a comprehensive program that includes traditional academic subjects adapted to her learning style, advanced mathematical and scientific enrichment, speech and language therapy, social skills training, and occupational therapy to help with fine motor development." "How long would such a program take?" David asked. Dr. Williamson smiled. "David, this isn't about fixing Emma or making her normal. This is about helping her reach her full potential while giving her the tools she needs to navigate the world. It's a lifelong journey, but with the right support, children like Emma can achieve extraordinary things." As they drove home, Emma fell asleep in the back seat, exhausted by the day's activities. David stared out the window, processing everything he'd learned. "She's going to be okay," Michael said quietly. "More than okay, she's going to be extraordinary." "I'm starting to believe that," David replied. "But Michael, I need you to understand something. This isn't about you anymore. This isn't about your guilt or your need to feel better about what happened 3 years ago. This is about Emma's future." "I understand," Michael said. "I'm not looking for absolution, David. I'm looking for the chance to do the right thing." For the first time since Michael had appeared at his apartment, David felt something that might have been the beginning of trust. 6 weeks into David's return to Technova, the quantum processing project had advanced further than anyone had imagined possible. Emma's original drawing had been just the beginning. As David worked to implement her solution on a larger scale, he began to understand that his daughter's visualization abilities were even more extraordinary than they'd realized. "Look at this," David said to Dr. Sarah Chen, pointing to a series of equations on his computer screen. "Emma's design doesn't just solve the coherence problem. It suggests a completely new approach to quantum computing architecture. If we're right about this, we could be looking at processing speeds that are orders of magnitude faster than anything currently available." "How certain are you?" Dr. Chen asked, studying the calculations. "I need to test it, but theoretically it's sound. The mathematical relationships Emma visualized are more complex than we initially understood." That evening, David brought Emma to the lab for the first time. He wanted her to see the work environment where her drawings were being transformed into revolutionary technology, and Dr. Williamson had suggested that exposing Emma to scientific environments could help nurture her natural abilities. Emma walked through the lab with wide-eyed wonder, taking in the computers, the quantum processing equipment, and the whiteboards covered with equations. When she saw her original drawing displayed in a frame on David's desk, she clapped her hands with delight. "My dancing numbers are helping," she exclaimed. "They're helping a lot, sweetheart," David said, kneeling down to her level. "Would you like to see what we built from your drawing?" Emma nodded enthusiastically, and David led her to the prototype quantum processor. The machine hummed quietly, its blue LED indicators blinking in complex patterns. Emma stared at the machine for a long moment, her head tilted to one side as if listening to something only she could hear. Suddenly, she tugged on David's sleeve. "Daddy, the lights are confused," she said. "They want to dance in a circle, but something is making them go straight." David looked at Dr. Chen with surprise. Emma was describing, in her own way, exactly the scaling problem they'd been trying to solve. The quantum states weren't maintaining their coherence in the expanded array configuration. "Emma," David said carefully, "can you show me how the lights want to dance?" Emma ran to a nearby whiteboard and began drawing with a marker, her small hands moving quickly across the surface. The pattern that emerged was unlike anything David had seen before, a spiral configuration that seemed to fold in on itself mathematically. Dr. Chen stared at the drawing in amazement. "David, this could be the solution to the scaling problem. She's visualizing a recursive quantum array architecture." "Can you implement it?" David asked. "It'll take some time, but yes. This could revolutionize everything we thought we knew about quantum computing." As they drove home that night, Emma chattered excitedly about the dancing lights and the number machines. David realized that his daughter wasn't just gifted. She was operating on a level of mathematical intuition that most scientists could only dream of achieving. "Daddy," Emma said as they pulled into their apartment complex, "why did the sad man get happy when I showed him my pictures?" David had been dreading this conversation, but he knew Emma deserved an honest answer appropriate for her age. "Sometimes adults make mistakes that hurt other people, even when they don't mean to. Mr. Harrison made a mistake that hurt our family, and when he realized what he'd done, he wanted to make things better." "Is that why we moved to the new apartment?" Emma asked. David had used part of his signing bonus to move them to a better neighborhood with a good school district. "Yes, sweetheart. Mr. Harrison is trying to help us now." "I like helping people," Emma said simply. "Maybe that's why the numbers wanted me to draw them for him." David smiled, struck by his daughter's innocent wisdom. Perhaps forgiveness wasn't about forgetting the past, but about choosing to focus on the possibilities of the future. That night, after Emma was asleep, David called Michael. "The new drawings Emma made today," David said. "They're going to change everything again. She's not just solving our current problems, she's showing us possibilities we never imagined. How is she doing with the treatment program? Michael asked. Better than I hoped. Dr. Williamson says Emma's communication skills are improving rapidly, and she's making friends in her social skills group. For the first time in years, I feel hopeful about her future. There was a pause before Michael spoke again. David, I know this is complicated, and I know you have every reason not to trust me. But I want you to know that whatever happens between us, I'm committed to making sure Emma has every opportunity to reach her potential. I'm starting to believe that, David said. But Michael, there's something you need to understand. Emma's abilities come with challenges. There will be days when she struggles with simple tasks that other children take for granted. There will be times when her condition makes life difficult in ways that money can't solve. I understand, Michael said. This isn't about fixing Emma or making her normal. It's about giving her the support she needs to be extraordinary in her own way. For the first time since this unlikely journey had begun, David felt that Michael truly understood what they were trying to accomplish. 3 months into Emma's treatment program, everything changed on a Tuesday morning that started like any other. David was at Technova working on the implementation of Emma's spiral array design when his phone rang. The caller ID showed Seattle Children's Hospital. Mr. Chen, this is Dr. Rebecca Martinez from the emergency department. Your daughter Emma was brought in about 20 minutes ago. She collapsed at school and is currently unconscious. David's world tilted on its axis. What happened? Is she going to be okay? We're running tests now. You should come immediately. David's hands shook as he grabbed his keys. Dr. Sarah Chen, who had overheard the conversation, insisted on driving him to the hospital. During the 15-minute drive that felt like hours, David's mind raced through all the worst-case scenarios he'd researched, but tried not to think about. The potential complications of Williams syndrome, the stress that rapid cognitive development could place on a developing brain. At the hospital, David found Maria Santos in the waiting room, tears streaming down her face. She was fine this morning, Maria said. She ate breakfast. She was excited about her math enrichment class. Then the school called and said she'd collapsed during recess. Doctor Martinez, a woman in her 40s with kind but serious eyes, led David to a consultation room. Mr. Chen, Emma is stable but unconscious. Her brain scans show unusual activity patterns that we're still trying to understand. We've consulted with Dr. Williamson from Stanford, and she's on her way here. What kind of unusual activity? David asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Her brain is showing extreme hyperactivity in areas associated with mathematical and spatial processing. It's as if her mind is working at an accelerated rate that her body can't sustain. David felt his legs go weak. Is she going to be okay? We don't know yet. This is uncharted territory, Mr. Chen. We've never seen neural activity patterns quite like this in a child with Williams syndrome and savant abilities. When Michael arrived at the hospital an hour later, he found David sitting beside Emma's bed, holding her small hand while machines monitored her vital signs. Emma looked peaceful, almost as if she were simply sleeping, but the steady beeping of the monitors reminded everyone that her condition was anything but normal. Any change? Michael asked quietly. David shook his head. Dr. Williamson thinks it might be related to the rapid cognitive development she's been experiencing. Her brain is processing information at such an advanced level that it's causing physical stress. Michael pulled up a chair beside David. What can we do? Wait, David said simply, and hope that her mind finds a way to balance itself. As the hours passed, specialists arrived from around the country. Dr. Williamson flew in from Stanford, bringing with her a team of neurologists who specialized in exceptional children. The consensus was troubling. Emma's condition was unprecedented, and traditional medical approaches might not apply. Her brain activity suggests she's in a state of continuous mathematical processing, Doctor. Williamson explained to David and Michael. It's as if her mind is solving incredibly complex problems at a subconscious level, but the intensity of that processing is overwhelming her system. Is there anything that might help her brain slow down? David asked desperately. Dr. Williamson hesitated. There's something we could try, but it's experimental, and there are risks. We could attempt to engage her conscious mind in controlled mathematical activities, giving her subconscious processing a structured outlet. What do you mean? Michael asked. We could present her with mathematical problems while she's in this state, using audio input to reach her subconscious mind. If we're right about what's happening, her brain might respond by organizing its activity around the external problems, potentially reducing the chaotic internal processing. David looked at his daughter's peaceful face, knowing that the decision he made in the next few minutes could determine her future. What are the risks? If we're wrong about what's causing this, we could make things worse. But Mr. Chen, if we do nothing, Emma might remain in this state indefinitely. Idur. David took a deep breath, thinking about all the drawings Emma had created, all the impossible problems she'd solved with such joy and innocence. Do it, he said. Emma's mind was meant to work with numbers and patterns. Maybe that's exactly what she needs. As the medical team prepared their experimental intervention, Michael realized that Emma's extraordinary gift might also be her greatest vulnerability. The same neural pathways that made her a mathematical prodigy were now threatening to overwhelm her developing brain. The next few hours would determine whether Emma Chen would wake up to continue changing the world, or whether her remarkable journey would end before it had truly begun. The experimental treatment began at 2 a.m., when the hospital was at its quietest, and Emma's brain activity could be monitored without external distractions. Dr. Williamson had assembled a team of neurologists, mathematicians, and audio specialists to implement her theoretical approach. We're going to start with simple mathematical sequences, Dr. Williamson explained to David and Michael, who refused to leave Emma's bedside. If her subconscious mind engages with the problems, we should see changes in her brainwave patterns. Through specially designed headphones, they began playing audio sequences, mathematical progressions, geometric relationships, and pattern recognition problems. At first, Emma's brain activity remained chaotically hyperactive, the monitors showing neural firing patterns that looked like electrical storms. Then, slowly, something began to change. "Look at this," said Dr. James Morrison, the lead neurologist. "Her brain activity is starting to organize around the mathematical inputs. The chaotic patterns are forming into structured responses." On the monitors, Emma's brain waves began to show rhythmic patterns that corresponded to the mathematical problems being presented. It was as if her mind was reaching out to grab onto the structured problems as anchors in the storm of her own processing. "It's working, Doctor," Williamson whispered. "Her subconscious is using the external problems to organize its own activity." For the next 4 hours, they continued the audio-mathematical therapy, gradually increasing the complexity of the problems. Emma's brain responded by shifting its activity patterns, organizing the chaotic neural firing into increasingly structured responses. At 6:17 a.m., Emma's eyes opened. "Daddy," she said softly, her voice weak but clear. "I had the most wonderful dream. All the numbers were singing together in perfect harmony." David burst into tears, gathering his daughter in his arms while being careful not to disturb the monitoring equipment. "I'm here, sweetheart. How do you feel?" "Tired," Emma said, "but happy." In my dream, I solved the biggest puzzle ever. It was like all the dancing numbers in the world came together to show me something important. Doctor. Williamson leaned forward intently. Emma, can you remember what the numbers showed you? Emma looked thoughtful for a moment, then nodded. They showed me how to make the light machines work even better. Not just faster, but kinder. Like they could help sick people and make the world prettier. Michael felt his breath catch. Even while unconscious, even while her brain was struggling to balance itself, Emma had been working on problems that could benefit humanity. Sweetheart, David said gently, you scared us. Your brain was working too hard, thinking too many thoughts at once. Emma looked concerned. Did I do something wrong? No, baby. You could never do anything wrong. Sometimes very smart people's brains work so fast that their bodies need to catch up. The doctors helped your mind slow down so you could wake up. Over the next several days, as Emma recovered in the hospital, the full implications of her unconscious mathematical processing became clear. The brain activity recordings from her crisis contained patterns that, when analyzed, revealed solutions to advanced problems in quantum computing, neural network design, and even medical diagnostic algorithms. It's unprecedented, Dr. Williamson told David and Michael. Emma's brain, even in crisis, was working on problems that could advance multiple fields of science simultaneously. But we've learned something crucial. Her mind needs structured outlets for its processing power, or it risks overwhelming itself. What does that mean for her future? Michael asked. It means Emma needs a carefully balanced approach to her education and development. She needs challenges that engage her extraordinary abilities, but also support systems that prevent cognitive overload. David held Emma's hand as she slept, exhausted by her ordeal, but peaceful now that her mind had found balance. Michael, he said quietly, I've been thinking about what Emma said, about making machines that are kinder, that help people. What if her gifts aren't just about solving technical problems? What if they're about showing us how to use technology in more humane ways? Michael nodded, understanding dawning in his eyes. Emma doesn't just see mathematical solutions, she sees the human impact of those solutions. That's what makes her truly extraordinary. As Emma recovered, word of her unique crisis and breakthrough began to spread through the scientific community. Researchers from around the world expressed interest in studying her case, in understanding how a child's mind could process such complex information even while unconscious. But David had learned something important during those terrifying hours when he thought he might lose his daughter. Emma's greatest gift wasn't her mathematical abilities, it was her pure intention to help others. Everything else was just a means to that end. The question now was how to nurture both her extraordinary mind and her beautiful heart, ensuring that her gifts would be used to make the world a better place for everyone. Michael Harrison, who had started this journey seeking to save his company, now understood that he was part of something much larger, protecting and nurturing a mind that could help save the world. 1 year later, Michael Harrison stood in the gleaming lobby of the Emma Chen Center for Exceptional Children, watching as dozens of families arrived for the facility's grand opening. The building, located on a beautiful campus just outside Seattle, represented the largest private investment in special needs education and research in the state's history. But for Michael, it represented something far more personal, a chance to ensure that no family would ever face the struggles that David and Emma had endured alone. Nervous? David asked, approaching Michael near the reception desk. David looked transformed from the broken man Michael had first encountered at the construction site. Dressed in a tailored suit, his face relaxed and confident, he now served as the center's director of advanced research, leading a team that studied how exceptional minds like Emma's could contribute to scientific advancement. Terrified, Michael admitted with a smile. This is the most important thing I've ever done, and I want to get it right. No, the center had taken 18 months to plan and build, but every detail had been carefully considered. The classrooms were designed to accommodate different learning styles and sensory needs. The research laboratories were equipped with the most advanced technology available. The therapy rooms were warm and welcoming spaces where children could feel safe exploring their unique abilities. Most importantly, the center's philosophy was built around Emma's own words from that day in the hospital. Technology should be kinder, and it should help make the world prettier. There she is, David said, pointing toward the main entrance. Emma Chen, now 8 years old, walked through the front doors holding the hand of Dr. Patricia Williamson. Emma had grown taller over the past year, her blonde hair now reaching her shoulders, but her extraordinary green eyes still held the same wisdom and innocence that had first captivated Michael in that empty conference room. She was wearing a bright blue dress that matched the center's signature color, and in her free hand she carried a rolled-up piece of paper, another one of her remarkable drawings, created specifically for today's ceremony. "Mr. Michael!" Emma called out when she saw him, running over with the enthusiasm that had become her trademark. "I made something special for today." Michael knelt down to her level, his heart swelling with affection for the child who had changed his life in ways he was still discovering. "I can't wait to see it, Emma. How are you feeling about today?" "Excited!" Emma said, bouncing on her toes. "Daddy says this place will help other kids like me learn how to make their numbers dance too." Over the past year, Emma's development had exceeded everyone's most optimistic expectations. Her communication skills had improved dramatically through intensive therapy, and she was now able to articulate complex mathematical concepts in ways that other people could understand. More importantly, she had developed friendships with other exceptional children, learning that being different was something to celebrate rather than hide. The breakthrough that had emerged from her crisis had revolutionized quantum computing, leading to advances in medical imaging, climate modeling, and artificial intelligence that were already benefiting millions of people around the world. But Emma seemed most proud of the diagnostic algorithm she had helped develop that could detect early signs of neurological conditions in children, potentially helping thousands of families get the support they needed sooner. "Ladies and gentlemen," Michael announced as the crowd gathered in the center's main atrium, "welcome to the Emma Chen Center for Exceptional Children." The applause was warm and sustained, but Michael could see Emma blushing at the attention. She had never fully understood why adults made such a big deal about her drawings, but she loved that her pictures could help other people. 18 months ago, Michael continued, I thought I understood what success meant. I measured it in profit margins, productivity statistics, and quarterly reports. I believed that business was about making difficult decisions and maintaining efficiency above all else. The crowd listened intently as Michael's voice grew more emotional. Then I met a 7-year-old girl who taught me that true success isn't about what we achieve for ourselves. It's about what we make possible for others. David stepped forward, placing a supportive hand on Michael's shoulder. The two men had traveled a long journey from that day when Michael had fired David for trying to care for his daughter. Their relationship now was built on mutual respect, shared purpose, and the understanding that forgiveness was not about forgetting the past, but about choosing to build a better future. "Emma," Michael said, turning to the little girl who had become the center of so many lives, "would you like to show everyone your special drawing?" Emma nodded eagerly and unrolled her paper. The drawing was unlike anything she had created before. Instead of mathematical equations or quantum processing diagrams, she had drawn dozens of children holding hands in a circle around a building that looked remarkably like the center they were standing in. Above the children, she had drawn a rainbow made of numbers and mathematical symbols, and at the top of the page, in her careful handwriting, were the words, "Everyone is special in their own way." "This is beautiful, Emma," Dr. Williamson said, kneeling down beside her. "Can you tell us about your drawings?" Emma looked around at all the faces watching her, families who had children like her, researchers who were dedicated to understanding exceptional minds, educators who specialized in nurturing unique gifts. "I drew all the kids who are going to come here," she explained. "They're all different, but they're all holding hands because being different together is better than being different alone." Michael felt tears streaming down his face as he listened to Emma's simple but profound wisdom. This 8-year-old child, whose mind could solve problems that stumped the world's leading scientists, had captured the essence of what the center was meant to accomplish. The Emma Chen Center for Exceptional Children will serve families from across the country, Michael announced. "We will provide education, therapy, research opportunities, and most importantly, a community where children with exceptional minds can discover that their differences are their greatest strengths." As the formal ceremony concluded and families began touring the facilities, Michael found himself alone with Emma in one of the quiet mathematics classrooms. She was already at a whiteboard, drawing new patterns with colored markers. "Emma," Michael said, "do you remember that night when we first met? When you were drawing in the old conference room?" Emma nodded, not looking up from her artwork. "You were very sad that night. I could see it in your eyes." "You saved my company that night, sweetheart. But more than that, you taught me something I had forgotten, that every person has value even when they can't show it in ways that other people immediately understand." Emma turned around, marker still in her hand, and looked at Michael with those extraordinary green eyes. "Daddy says you learned how to see people's hearts instead of just their work. Is that true?" Michael smiled, amazed once again by her ability to distill complex emotions into simple truth. "Yes, Emma. You taught me how to see people's hearts." "Good," Emma said, turning back to her drawing, "because hearts are much more important than work." As Michael watched Emma create another masterpiece of mathematical beauty, he reflected on the journey that had brought them all to this moment. He had started as a CEO focused solely on profit and efficiency, willing to discard anything or anyone that didn't contribute to his bottom line. But Emma had shown him that the things that seem weakest often contain the greatest strength, that the people who struggle most visibly often have the most to offer, and that true success is measured not by what we accumulate, but by what we make possible for others. The Emma Chen Center for Exceptional Children would go on to serve thousands of families, pioneering new approaches to education and therapy for children with unique minds. Emma herself would continue to solve problems that advanced human knowledge while maintaining her pure desire to help others. But for Michael Harrison, the greatest lesson had already been learned. That a 7-year-old girl with a box of crayons had possessed the wisdom to save not just his company, but his soul. As Emma put the finishing touches on her latest creation, a drawing showing mathematical equations transforming into butterflies, Michael understood that some solutions can't be calculated or programmed. They can only be discovered by hearts that remain open to the extraordinary gifts that surround us every day, if we're wise enough to see them.